All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go over an introduction to data analytics and project management. This first presentation is really just getting you some familiarization with the terms, some of the main concepts that we're going to go over, and we'll go briefly through this. What I want you to be able to do, obviously, is be able to review the material yourself, kind of go over the key points, and I'll just real quickly breeze through it here and draw out some things that are particularly important. So the objectives for this class, for this week really, talk about main concepts of IT project management. What's the definition of projects, programs, portfolios, and such. How we integrate all the activities, how all the activities are important to be able to manage a project effectively. And then go into strategy of how we define what projects should be done, and then the business case of how we justify those projects and actually get them approved to move forward. So IT project management, it's important when we talk about project management, and why we have this class is because IT projects have a terrible track record. A third of projects are canceled for completion, half are challenged, meaning they're not meeting the numbers that they need to, and only a sixth of them actually succeed. Reasons are because managing a technology project is not like something we've been doing for 200 years. Each one of these things, first off, it's a new domain set, relatively. So it isn't like building a house or building a bridge. We've been doing this for hundreds of years, and you know kind of what the problems are. With IT, it's inherently new, right? It's either a new technology that hasn't been done before, or it's a new technology into an existing business that hasn't had that technology before. So it's risky. Engineers tend to be inherently overconfident, and unknown problems happen to other people, not us. So we always think that it's going to go better than it does because we have a vision of what it should be, but there's a lot of technology steps in between here and there that can cause problems, and that tends to play out pretty much. Murphy's Law plays out in technology projects, so we got to be ready for that. Formal project management is one way that we've tried to get our arms around IT. So all the reasons here for formal project management. From better control of the resources, lower cost, shorter development times, improved productivity. What we're trying to talk about this term are means to get about all these goals that we have listed there. Definition of a project, I'm not going to go over this, but you should know that. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create some product, service, or result. So an analytics project may be an analysis that's being done, or an implementation project may be a piece of software they're implementing in the business. Programs tend to be groups of related projects managed in a coordinated way. So program managers then oversee those programs and often act as kind of bosses for your project managers. Project managers, which is what we're really prepping you for in this class, you work with a project sponsor, a project team, and others in order to meet the project goals, which again, it's a defined cut in time where we're trying to meet some specific end, and we're going to apply resources to meet that specific end. The main thing we're going to go over this course, and the concept you really need to understand by the time we're done, is the triple constraint. That means successful project, you have to meet all three of these: scope, time, and cost. And if you change one, the reason it's called a triple constraint is if you change one, it tends to push pressure on the other two. If you change any of them, then it tends to pressure the other two. Change two of them, that third one's going to get pressured. So think about that as we go into scope, time, and cost. If you reduce cost, it's going to increase your time and scope. If you change your scope, it's going to increase time and cost. Those are the things we need to be keeping in mind in that relationship. If you understand this and can control this, then you can control the project. There's a lot of different techniques that go into project management. We'll call them project areas: scope management, quality management, cost, time, stakeholder management. These are things that you got to spend some time and resource thinking through and working independently, but they all come together through integration management to basically make sure that project is successful going forward. And we're going to spend, and each week we're going to look at either one or two of those different domain areas to really dig into how we leverage those. Success factors for a project. This is the list. If you get these, this is how you make sure you're successful. And it's useful to know this up front. Do you have executive support for the project? If you don't, it's going to be hard. Are the users that are going to use, are they involved? If they're not, it's going to be hard to be successful. Do you have an experienced person running it? Do you have clear objectives? Is your scope small and defined and well-defined so you can keep your arms around it? Do you have short schedules, multiple milestones so you can keep yourself on track? Are your project managing success? Is that clearly defined what that is? And are you using as much standard stuff as you can so you're not inheriting a bunch of other risk? And basically that bottom one, is it low risk? The more you can get the project to be low risk, get all the undefineds out of it, the better off you're going to be. There's always going to be undefineds. There's unknowns always. They're going to come up. Get as many of them out of the project as you can. Executive support, we talked about that first. That is key. You got secure resources. It protects your resources, gives you access to the rest of the company. You can't assume that the executives understand your project and see it as obvious as you do. So you've got to work to have an executive support. User involvement, same kind of thing. Who's going to be validating this and making sure it's successful? It helps you to overcome different cultures from IT to the users, gets time commitment so they can help you shape what success looks like and how you implement it into the program. A successful project manager is key. So having 97% of successful projects are run by experienced project managers. Not all good managers are good IT managers. And that's something else to keep in mind. Someone who wants everything laid out and can't handle ambiguity is not going to do well in IT. The clearly defined project objectives. The reason that this is key is because you've got to be able to meet your scope, time, and cost goals. And if you don't have the objectives lined up, then it's very difficult to define what those sub goals should be. You've got to make or save a certain amount of money. You got to provide a good return on investment. You got to make the sponsors happy. Results of all of those things are your main objective of this project. You've got to have these clearly defined objectives so that you can overcome the institutional inertia and make sure that if you're changing scope and things like that as you manage that triple constraint, that you're still sticking within the goal of the project. Scope. Keep your scope as small as possible. Small scope helps keep the objectives clear. Don't take on a bunch, hey, while we're there, we should do this, or hey, this would be great if we did. Keep your scope small and fairly well cleaned. It overcomes that desire to please everyone that comes along. And shorter schedules. Again, if you can manage to the next task and make sure you can focus and get that next task done, then pretty soon, if you keep doing that time after time, you get everything done. Keep it simple. Make sure people can see the end where we're supposed to go and have a bunch of checkpoints along the way. The clearly defined project management process. If we have a project going, everyone's going to kind of know what the whole operating rhythm is. A well-defined process helps to get all the activities in motion at the right time and make sure we don't we have automatic and contingent kinds of decisions accounted for, ready to go, so we don't spend our time trying to figure out things that we should already know. And then standard infrastructure and maturity really means only implement the project and take on risk for the things that you need to take on risk for. If there's other standard infrastructure that works, use it. Apply yourself on top of other things that you know aren't going to add risk. And then enterprise systems thinking. Make sure the program isn't run in isolation. Multiple initiatives are usually going on at once. You aren't going to be the only project that's running in your department. So keep an eye on what's occurring out there. How do we operate within the culture and organizational framework of the enterprise itself? And then your stakeholders. Who has a vested interest in this project or is otherwise impacted by its success? And keep in mind, it can be not just the first ones we list here, the sponsor, the manager, the project team, people working it, the customers who are going to use it, but also opponents. There are stakeholders who might want to use your money for other things. So keep in mind that we need to manage all of those stakeholders across the business. Governance and standards is going to play into this as well. If we are implementing a new project, we have to make sure that we are mapping to and following the standards and guidelines that are laid out. Those guidelines will help us be more effective because they give us the channel through which we can execute a successful project. So finally, like I said, projects are complicated. Know those success factors, though. Know those success factors and really wrap your project around those so you know kind of what it's going to take to be successful with this. Know those different knowledge areas. We're going to go over each one of those in the class. And use good integrating techniques that will help keep the project moving forward with all those areas and make strategic decisions on investments. And those investments having good business cases that'll back them up, get you that executive sponsorship support, and then keep all your stakeholders engaged as you move forward and execute a low risk, high maturity, minimized scope project in milestones and with tasks that you can complete and be successful with.